welcome back to Easy Talk Time. Today is a different kind of episode. No funny stories, no light-hearted debates. Today, Jake and I are sitting down to talk about something that every single person on this planet needs to understand. The war between the United States and Iran that began in February 2026. How we got here, what actually happened week by week, and what the ceasefire announced just yesterday really means for all of us. We are breaking this down in plain, honest, human language, because this is not a story just for politicians and analysts. This is a story for every ordinary person whose life has already been touched by what is happening right now in the Middle East.
And before we start, I want to say something directly. We know this is heavy. For some of you listening, this is not just news, it is personal. You have family in the region. You are watching your fuel bills go up. You are genuinely scared about what comes next. We see you. We hear you. So we are going to treat this topic with the respect and seriousness it deserves. We are not here to take political sides. We are here to explain clearly, to inform honestly, and to give you some real clarity in what has been an incredibly confusing and frightening few weeks.
So let us go all the way back to the beginning, because to understand what happened on February 28th, 2026, you have to understand the decades of history that made it almost inevitable.
The conflict between the United States and Iran did not start in 2026. It goes back to 1979, the year of the Iranian Revolution, when the Shah of Iran was overthrown and Ayatollah Khamenei established the Islamic Republic. That same year, Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and held 52 American diplomats hostage for 444 days. 444 days. That single event poisoned the relationship between these two countries for nearly 5 decades, and it never truly recovered.
From 1979 onwards, the U.S. and Iran have been locked in permanent hostility. Never quite war, but never peace either. Iran began building what many nations believed was a secret nuclear weapons program. The U.S. and its allies responded with crushing economic sanctions. Then, in 2015, under President Obama, a breakthrough happened, a historic nuclear deal called the JCPOA, where Iran agreed to freeze its nuclear program in exchange for sanctions being lifted. For a moment, the world actually thought it might work.
And then, in 2018, President Trump, during his first term, walked away from that deal completely. Iran, furious and feeling betrayed, began expanding its nuclear program again and stopped allowing international inspectors access to its facilities. The window that had opened slammed shut.
Then came 2023, 2024, and 2025, the years that made 2026 almost unavoidable. The Hamas attack on Israel in October 2023 pulled Iran's allies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, into open war with Israel. In April 2024, Israel bombed the Iranian consulate in Damascus, killing senior Iranian military officials. Iran retaliated. Tensions escalated. Then, in June 2025, came the 12-day war. 12 days of direct missile strikes between Israel and Iran, with the U.S. intercepting Iranian attacks and bombing 3 Iranian nuclear sites. A ceasefire was reached, but nothing was resolved. The wounds stayed open.
And at the start of 2026, 2 events pushed everything to the absolute edge. First, in January 2026, the largest anti-government protest Iran had seen since 1979 revolution erupted across the country. Ordinary Iranian people, exhausted by a shattered economy, rising prices, decades of repression, took to the streets in enormous numbers, and the Iranian government responded with brutal force. Thousands of protesters were killed in the crackdown. The whole world watched in horror.
These were the same people that President Trump had encouraged on January 13th, telling Iranians to keep protesting and that help is on the way. The help that arrived looked very different from what anyone expected.
And second, Iran's nuclear program. Just before the war began, International inspectors from the IAEA reported that Iran had stored highly enriched uranium in an underground facility and had refused access for inspections. At the State of the Union on February 24th, Trump stated that Iran had restarted its nuclear program and was building missiles capable of striking the United States. Indirect nuclear negotiations were still happening. There were talks in Oman just days before the strikes, and the Omani foreign minister had actually announced a breakthrough had been reached. A breakthrough 2 days before the bombs fell.
On morning of February 28, 2026, the world woke up to news that changed everything. The United States and Israel had launched a massive, coordinated surprise military attack on Iran. The American operation was called Operation Epic Fury. The Israeli operation was called Operation Roaring Lion. President Trump gave the order at 8:38 p.m. the previous night. By morning, the Middle East was already burning.
The opening strike was extraordinary. Israeli jets carried out what military commanders called decapitation strikes, strikes aimed directly at Iran's top leadership. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, the man who had ruled Iran with an iron fist since 1989, was killed in the very first hours of the war, along with several senior officials who had gathered at his residential compound. Think about what that means. The supreme leader of a nation of 90 million people assassinated in a surprise military strike. The political earthquake from that single moment is still shaking the entire region today.
Simultaneously, U.S. forces unleashed a devastating assault on Iran's military infrastructure. B-2 stealth bombers, B-1 and B-52 bombers, Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from warships, HIMARS rocket systems, command and control centers, ballistic missile sites, drone facilities, radar systems, nuclear-related targets. By the end of the first full day of fighting, U.S. Central Command reported nearly 2,000 separate targets had been struck inside Iran. 2,000.
And Iran retaliated immediately. Hundreds of ballistic missiles and thousands of drones were launched at Israel, at U.S. military bases across the region, and at the Gulf Arab states. Dubai International Airport, one of the busiest airports on Earth, was hit by drone strikes and shut down, stranding hundreds of thousands of travelers. Oil facilities in Bahrain were struck. The U.S. consulate in Dubai was hit. Amazon Web Services in the UAE and Bahrain were targeted. Yes, the cloud infrastructure that runs a significant portion of the global internet was attacked in a war.
And most critically for everyone watching from outside the region, Iran moved to block the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is a waterway just 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point between Iran and Oman, and roughly 20% of the world's entire oil supply passes through it every single day. When Iran threatened to close it, oil prices spiked. Energy costs surged globally. Countries like Bangladesh closed universities early for the summer because of the energy crisis. Pakistan and the Philippines declared 4-day work weeks. This one narrow body of water that most people had never heard of before February was suddenly strangling the entire world economy.
The war did not end quickly. 6 weeks of grinding, brutal, daily conflict followed. Iran's new supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, the son of the man who was killed, was quickly appointed and immediately vowed to continue the fight. Iran kept launching missiles at Israel day after day, though the rate dropped significantly as Israeli and U.S. forces systematically destroyed more and more of Iran's launch capabilities. Israel's air defense system intercepted roughly 92% of incoming missiles, but some got through. Israeli civilians were killed. Apartment buildings were struck. Thousands of people were injured.
Sadly, the war spread far beyond the borders of Iran and Israel. Hezbollah in Lebanon resumed attacks on Israel from the north. The Houthis in Yemen launched ballistic missiles at Israel in solidarity with Iran. In Iraq, Iran-backed militias struck at U.S. positions. By early April, more than 1,400 people, soldiers and civilians combined, had been killed in Lebanon alone. Iran's ambassador to the United Nations stated that more than 1,500 Iranian civilians had been killed inside Iran by the strikes, including people hit at hospitals, schools, and cultural heritage sites.
I need us to sit with that for a moment. Real people, families, children, people who had absolutely nothing to do with nuclear programs or military strategy or decades of geopolitical chess. Ordinary Iranian citizens, the very same people that just weeks before had been risking their lives protesting for their own freedom, the people Trump said help was coming for, were now being killed in their homes by the military operation that followed those words. History will wrestle with that contradiction for a very long time.
Meanwhile, the economic damage was spreading across the entire planet. Oil prices surged. Mortgage rates in the United States rose because of the war. Shipping companies rerouted away from the Strait of Hormuz, adding thousands of kilometers to their journeys, pushing up the cost of virtually every imported good worldwide. The International Monetary Fund warned that every 10% increase in energy prices would add 0.5% to global inflation. People standing at petrol stations, people paying electricity bills, people buying groceries. They were all quietly paying the price of a war happening thousands of kilometers away from their front doors.
Then, on April 7, 2026, things escalated to a point that genuinely terrified diplomats around the world. President Trump issued a public ultimatum. If Iran did not agree to his demands, primarily to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and accept a deal by 8 p.m. on Tuesday, April 8th, the consequences would be, in his words, catastrophic. He posted on Truth Social that if Iran refused, a whole civilization will die.
34 countries reacted with immediate alarm. Iran's ambassador addressed the United Nations Security Council, calling Trump's statement a flagrant violation of international law. The whole world was counting down hours to a deadline. People were genuinely asking, is this how a wider war begins?
And then, just hours before that deadline expired, a ceasefire was announced. A 2-week ceasefire, brokered with the critical assistance of Pakistani mediators, was agreed between the United States and Iran on April 8, 2026. Investors around the world exhaled, stock markets rose, oil prices began to ease. In Tehran's Revolution Square, ordinary Iranians gathered and waved their national flags.
But we have to be honest with you about what the ceasefire actually is and what it is not. It is 2 weeks, not a peace treaty, not a resolution, not an end. It is a pause in a conflict that has left enormous destruction, thousands dead, and virtually every underlying issue completely unresolved. Israel has stated the ceasefire does not include Lebanon, meaning Israeli strikes on Hezbollah continued even after the announcement. Iran responded by closing the Strait of Hormuz again in reaction to the Lebanon strikes. As of today, April 9, 2026, the ceasefire exists, but it is fragile in a way that should give every one of us pause.
And the questions that started this war are still completely unanswered. What actually happens to Iran's nuclear program now? Who does Mojtaba Khamenei, an untested new leader, actually represent, and what does he want? What is the real endgame for the United States and Israel beyond the military strikes? And perhaps most importantly, what do the ordinary people of Iran face in the weeks and months ahead? There are no easy answers. But these are the questions every one of us has a responsibility to keep asking.
So what does all of this mean for you, the person listening to this right now, whether you are in India, the United Kingdom, Nigeria, the United States, or anywhere else on this planet?
First, understand that this war affects you whether you feel it directly or not. Every time you fill your car with petrol, pay an electricity bill, buy groceries, or book a flight somewhere, the cost of this conflict is already quietly woven into that number. The world is connected in ways that make no war truly distant anymore. What happens in a narrow waterway between Iran and Oman reaches your wallet within weeks.
Second, Do not let the complexity of this story make you stop caring about the human beings inside it. On every side of this conflict, there are ordinary people. Iranian families who lost everything, Israeli families living in bomb shelters night after night, soldiers on all sides far from home who did not choose to be there, children in Tehran and Tel Aviv and Beirut who don't understand why the world is suddenly so loud and so dangerous. The politics of this war are complicated. The humanity is not.
Third, be very careful what you read and what you share. This is a story completely surrounded by propaganda, misinformation, and deeply motivated narratives from every direction. The United States says one thing, Iran says another, Israel says another, Russia and China say different things again. Read from multiple sources. Question what you are being told. Think critically and carefully. A conflict this significant deserves your genuine, thoughtful attention, not just your outrage reflex.
And fourth, and this is the most personal thing either of us will say today, do not lose hope. Wars feel permanent when you're living inside them. They feel like the new normal. They feel like they will never end. But history shows us again and again that even the most bitter, destructive, seemingly irresolvable conflicts eventually find their way to a table. People talk. Deals are made. Children grow up in peace in places that were once completely unrecognizable. The ceasefire that happened yesterday is fragile and imperfect and uncertain. But it exists. Someone chose to make a phone call instead of launching a missile, and that matters.
We started EasyTalkTime because we believe that ordinary people deserve to understand the world they are living in. Not just the version of events that powerful people want them to hear, but the full, complicated, human, sometimes heartbreaking reality. This war is that reality right now. 6 weeks old, fragile ceasefire in place, thousands already dead, millions of lives disrupted, and all of us, every single one of us, connected to it whether we chose to or not.
Stay informed. Stay kind. Stay human.
To every single person listening today, wherever you are on this earth, our hearts go out to everyone affected by this conflict. And our deepest, most sincere hope is that the next time we sit down to record an episode about this war, we're telling you that it is truly over.
Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. This has been Easy Talk Time.
Thank you. Goodbye.
If you enjoyed this, subscribe to Easy Talk Time and keep learning English with us.